In August 2025, headlines erupted across the African continent. Ma Samra, the former Prime Minister of Mali, had been thrown behind bars. The charge? A single social media post. To outside observers, it seemed like an act of censorship, an overreaction, by a government growing intolerant. But for millions of Malians, it wasn't suppression, it was justice finally arriving. Long overdue and deeply symbolic. Because this wasn't just about a tweet, it was about what that tweet represented. Ma Samra wasn't just another former politician with a controversial opinion. He was the embodiment of a system that many Africans are now working to dismantle, a relic of the Francophone era, where leaders were trained, positioned, and groomed to serve not their own people, but foreign interests. He wore the mask of reform and democracy, but beneath that exterior was a loyal servant of colonial continuity. His fall wasn't random, it was a reflection of a new Africa that no longer bows to Paris. Born in 1975, Ma Samra was no ordinary public figure. He was a French-certified technocrat, a chartered accountant molded by institutions that, for decades, produced African elites loyal to France. He wasn't just a civil servant, he was part of the machinery of dependency. His ascent through politics was just as precise as it was rapid. From mayor to minister to the Prime Minister of Mali in 2014, every step was carved within the framework of old world allegiance. And though he rarely voiced direct support for France, his silence spoke volumes. Then came Kidal, the turning point, the moment when Ma Samra's carefully constructed image fell apart. In May 2014, as Prime Minister, he journeyed to Kidal in northern Mali to assert state authority. But instead of diplomacy, he was greeted with bloodshed. Armed separatists attacked his delegation, killing Malian soldiers and humiliating his government in broad daylight. Just a short distance away, heavily armed French troops watched the ambush unfold and did nothing. For the people of Mali, it was a moment of national disgrace. But what followed was even more telling. Ma Samra said nothing. No condemnation of France's inaction. No demand for accountability. No outrage. Just silence. The kind of silence only a man fully aware of where his loyalties lie could maintain. He didn't step down in protest. He didn't rally for his fallen soldiers. He simply faded into the background. And that's when Malians saw the truth. This wasn't a man who stood with them. He was a man who stood above them, facing Paris, not Bamako. In that silence, he confirmed everything his critics had been saying for years. He wasn't one of them. He was one of them, a colonial servant dressed in national colors. When three nations, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, realized they shared the same scars, they didn't just protest, they rose together. They forged something historic, the alliance of Sahel states. This wasn't just a political alignment, it was a declaration of independence, not the kind signed on paper under foreign approval, but the kind born from defiance, unity, and fire. All three had endured decades of foreign troops on their soil, watching as peace remained a mirage. And when they finally stood up, what did the world offer them? Sanctions, punishment, a reminder that the old masters still expected obedience. But this time, the message back was loud and clear. We quit. The three didn't just link their armies, they reimagined West Africa. They walked out of ECOWAS, a regional body often accused of doing Paris bidding, and began building a new foundation rooted in sovereignty. There's talk of a shared currency, unrestricted trade, open borders, and a united economic front. No longer will decisions about African futures be made in Paris or Brussels. They're being made in Bamako, Niamey, and Ouagadougou. At the heart of this rebellion is a phrase that captures it all: Africa's second independence. And it's being championed by leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, men who don't speak in the polished tone of colonial-trained diplomats, but in the raw voice of liberation. That's why this movement scares the old guard. It's not just foreign powers who feel threatened, it's the local elites who enabled them. The political class that once operated as polite middlemen between Africa and its exploiters is now exposed. Figures like Ma Samra are no longer seen as neutral politicians, they are seen as relics of an order being dismantled piece by piece. And when you burn the old house down, you don't spare the doorman. But if you kick the colonial master out, Who takes their place? For Mali, the answer has shifted eastward. Russia entered with a different deal: no lectures, no backroom demands, just weapons, training, and the promise that Mali would chart its own path. When separatists took over Kidal, it was the French who stood by and watched the chaos. But with Russian support, Mali's forces didn't just return, they reclaimed it. The territory that once symbolized national humiliation became the symbol of national redemption. And unlike the past, where African soldiers bled while foreign armies watched, this time Russian troops stood beside them, not above them. China, too, brought a different offer. Instead of simply extracting resources, Chinese firms began building roads, bridges, power plants, long-term infrastructure that stayed behind. There were no colonial strings, no democracy tests from nations that once supported dictators. Just partnership. For the West, this shift is terrifying, because once a country experiences cooperation built on respect rather than dominance, they never want to return to begging for aid from the same hands that shackled them. Which brings US back to Ma Samra's infamous tweet. Why did a single post spark such a firestorm? Because it wasn't just a tweet, it was a coded attack, a calculated message wrapped in the language of Western NGOs, talking about prisoners of conscience and democratic values. But the people of Mali saw through it instantly. They didn't see a freedom fighter, they saw a man using the same tired vocabulary of the colonizer, terms designed to delegitimize the new government. In the eyes of Western media, and in response, the digital resistance struck back. The hashtag colonial servant went viral. Young Africans flooded social media with facts, images, and receipts, reminders of Ma Samra's silence during the Kidal massacre, his compliance with France, and his carefully crafted public image. In contrast, they highlighted leaders like Assimi Goïta, soldiers who had risked their lives, not for photo ops, but for real sovereignty. What followed wasn't just a trending topic. It was a masterclass in digital resistance, a generation rewriting the narrative from inside Africa, not from outside it. And now, everything comes down to one date: September 29th. That's when Ma Samra will face trial. But this won't just be a courtroom drama, it will be a symbolic reckoning. An entire era is on trial, the age of the colonial enabler. The verdict will echo far beyond Mali. It will signal to every leader still clinging to the old ways that the tide has turned. No more serving to masters. No more polished chains passed off as progress. The people want leaders who fight for them, not ones who bow in silence when the nation bleeds. As the West frets about authoritarianism, the Sahel is too busy rebuilding. Brick by brick, border by border, treaty by treaty, they are shaping a new future, a future not dictated by those who once plundered them, but by those willing to fight, bleed, and rise for true independence. A Malian judge may decide Ma Samra's legal fate, but history has already spoken. He belongs to a past that no longer fits this continent's future. Africa is no longer polishing the master's table. It's building its own house.